Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Digital taxes on big tech remain a point of tension between Europe and the United States as President Trump threatens tariffs on countries that implement these levies. Now, meanwhile, new energy agreements between Russia and China pose additional strategic considerations for all of Europe. Joining us now to discuss it all is Piotr Maciej Kaczyński, a lecturer at the University of Warsaw. Good to have you back in the studio. Welcome.
Good to be back. Welcome.
So let's start with a big, powerful statement, competition. We have the woman leading it for the European Union, Teresa Ribeira, who said very much that the Europeans should hold their ground when it comes to the values. They should not give Trump an inch, ready to walk away from this trade deal potentially. What do you make of her stance?
Let's put it this way. Teresa Ribeira is right when she's talking about being united, because the power of Europe in any negotiations out there with whomever is to stay united. Is it United States, Russia, China, whomever out there on whatever topic? And here on trade issues, the Commission, and Ribeira is the Vice President of the European Commission, she's the second woman in charge just after Ursula von der Leyen, she says this is the biggest challenge right now. Why is she saying this? This is the really interesting point that she's trying to make, is that there are pressures of Americans, by Americans, vis-a-vis individual member states. So watch out when President Nawrocki is meeting Donald Trump in the White House today, because this is one of those signals out there that Americans are putting pressures on individual member state and then staying united. That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, you pointed out the visit President Nawrocki in the White House today. Putting pressure on, I think this is an interesting one, because at the same time, Trump will likely do that. He's more or less aligned with Nawrocki and his party. But I think it's also worth remembering that it's the Commission very much that deals with trade policy. So how much pressure can Trump really exert on Nawrocki? What kind of impact could that have? Because, I mean, Trump has said he is going to be doing something. He's going to bring down the shakedown here.
Absolutely. But look, the perspective is quite, let's put it, complex. I don't like this word because a lot of people are saying, oh, it's complex, then I'm going to turn away or turn the TV off. But when it comes to those negotiations, pure trade issues, this is a topic between the Commission and the US government. But when we talk about taxation, a lot of those taxation issues or taxation related issues that Americans are putting pressure on are actually not related to the Commission or Brussels, but they are related to the European Union member states. For example, take the Minister Gawkowski a couple months ago. He announced that Poland will introduce a digital tax against the digital companies out there. So we are not talking about only DSA or DST, whatever the big acronyms stand for. They are important European laws that are shaking vis-a-vis what Americans are doing. But when it comes to tax questions, those questions are related to national competences and national decisions. And here would be a question, will President Nawrocki veto or not introduction of this new tax that would bring some revenues to the Polish budget?
Yeah, and on that as well, I mean, at the same time, it was just yesterday, we had another high-profile visit in Washington. That was Sikorski, the foreign minister of Poland, also meeting his counterpart, Rubio. So also, what about the optics in here? Give us your sign. Like, one day before, it's the government. Remember, we have to talk about this cohabitation. Today, it's the president of Poland. Is that aligned in any way? Or tell us your take here, what kind of signal that sends to the States?
I think it's important message that the Poles are united. The very moment that President Nawrocki, his entourage, or Prime Minister Tusk and his entourage have a perception that it's closer for them and easier for them to talk to somebody in the White House or somebody in Brussels than with your partner, Polish partner, on the opposite side of the, let's say, street of Krakowskie Przedmieście in Warsaw, then we have a problem. Because when we are divided, partners outside of Poland can play us out against each other. And that's exactly what we should be, quoting Ribeira, fighting for, to stay united, to have the same message across. And that's a real disappointment when you see President Nawrocki going to the White House without any MFA backing. this is kudos to the MFA and rather a negative signal coming from the presidential chancellery.
And at the same time, I think it's worth mentioning, I believe it's one of the first times, if ever, that President of Poland is actually going in the White House. I don't think he's bringing any sort of government reps. He's not bringing the ambassador. He's going in on his own. So I think that also kind of shows a signal there, doesn't it?
How new this guy is. He's clearly a new person in this office without any political background in the past. I mean, he was the president of the Institute of National Remembrance. There's no diplomatic, traditional diplomatic relationships. He was just traveling the world as president of IPN without this diplomatic function. Look, we as private citizens can also travel the world, and we are not having diplomatic entourage. We are, using either business class or economy class when we travel, but that's a completely different story. And here President Nawrocki, he says, well, I've been to the United States before. I've met President Trump before. He has met President Trump as candidate. Therefore, he knows what the game is. No, he's not. He doesn't, because there are files, and there are many of those files, and you have to get yourself accustomed to that MFA employs hundreds of people who are dealing their job, and they are analyzing the issues out there. And if you are going as president of Poland, you represent. It doesn't matter that you do or you don't have certain powers. It matters you represent. You need to be up to the minute, the last minute, have the know-how of what can come from the other side. Because President Trump, whatever you may think of him, he's going to be well informed and briefed about what are the situations here in Poland. So
also, I want to come back to that theme of unity. You're saying that Europe should stay united. That's what Bera, the head of the Commission for competition, rather, is all about. Unity, though, with the digital services and taxes, you said competence of nation states as well. We had some countries that backed down over this. I believe it was Canada who backed down on some of these laws.
Okay, yeah.
UK as well. Could you see that potentially also happening across European Union member states and all this?
I hope not, but Europeans have to acknowledge also that they live in a certain reality out there. It's not that we are living in a completely different planet. There is a very strong pressure coming from the White House, and whatever the European response to this pressure, it has to be in unison. That's the only expectation I have. Whether the Commission and member states will back down, to what degree they will back down, because Canada did. United Kingdom is negotiating with those companies over limited amount of restrictions or limitations or what have you. And then there are the Europeans. Europeans usually are doing things in consultation in the process. So the Europeans can always say to the Americans, look, we have consulted those big tech companies from America. It is those companies, however, who are now seeing this dilemma, and they are putting pressure in Washington as much as in Europe, and they are saying, we don't need to put pressure in Brussels right now. We are putting pressure in Washington to remove those levies and those regulations and limitations. I think what Europeans should do, they should come out with the general and back idea of why do we need those regulations in the first place. Because we need to convince our partners that unlimited, unregulated big tech is actually more of a threat than a partner in the future ahead of us.
Yeah, a lot of convincing. Everybody said pressure indeed. I want to talk about also one-side pressure. We were just touting this 15% cap deal from between the United States and Europe. That seems to be sort of now again on shaky grounds with this. But the other side,
it's going to be on shaky grounds for the remaining of the term.
Potentially. There's also shaky ground in some way. I'm curious to see. Now we have also China. We have this, obviously, this major parade that happened. We've had certain leaders of the world invited. China's playing big. This new pipeline, the huge amount, Power of Siberia 2, once it's online, 50 billion cubic meters of gas annually, one of the biggest pipelines ever constructed. But what does that mean, even if it takes some time to get online? How does this impact, especially energy-wise, especially LNG, everything in Europe? There's another side of pressure, isn't it, for Europe?
It's a huge pressure out there. I mean, the Chinese and the Chinese world that we are living in, this is another realization out there. This is already a Chinese world that we are living in. All countries around China are finding a way to compromise with the Chinese, including the Japanese, including the Russians, including the Indians. They will have their tensions, but this is a China-dominated world. Asia is responsible for over half of global population, half of global economy, etc., etc., etc. So this is the Asian century. We in Europe are on the periphery of it. If the West was united, that is the traditional West, G7 if you like, with the Japanese, then there is a room for maneuver to negotiate with the Chinese. But what are the Chinese doing? Exactly the same thing the Americans have been doing recently, putting pressure on individual member states. Invitations to come to Beijing to be present during the 80 years anniversary parade were sent also to President Nawrocki. He clearly has chosen Washington over Beijing, but it also shows you that the Chinese, and that's the message I was reading, that the Chinese were a little bit, let's put it this way, upset that President Nawrocki chose Washington over China. I don't think they are truly upset about why he chose one over the other, but it shows you that they are trying to lure even the Polish president, who is in disagreement with the Polish government in Warsaw, because our domestic weaknesses and the fact that the two are not talking are played out by our friends, but also by people who are not as friendly.
So just in conclusion, because I mean we're in a position now where we have immense pressure from the United States, a fickle ally in a certain way, pressure now also from China. Where does that leave Europe? In a united way, disunited? It's a tough road. Just quickly at the end.
Sure. I mean, historically speaking, Europe has been living since 1945 under a threat. There was a threat for Western Europe from the Soviet Union through entire 45 year until 1989. Then we had a brief moment of freedom, and we probably took too much of that fresh air. But since 2008, 2009, those threats are real again. And this is nothing new. We have constructed Europe under the threat. And now we are doing the same. The challenge has always been to stay united, and the question without the answer is whether if we are united, is it enough?
All right, so the big question, which I'm sure we'll still analyze in the next few weeks and months ahead. Look, Piotr Kaczyński, always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay tuned, much more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away. Goodbye.